same linear trajectory. His next place is going to be Mexico. So he's going to be talking to us about carbon cycling and the work that him and his lab are doing over at Texas, and I'll leave the rest to him.
Thank you. And first, before I start, I want to thank Eric for the invitation. It's a pleasure being here, and then Paolo for the hospitality and have the hospitality restaurant.
No, the other one.
That one goes up and the switch goes off.
This one goes up and the switches off.
No, the black.
Gotcha. We're here.
Right. So it's almost faithful. Last night I was talking to Eric a couple years ago, almost a couple years ago. We met not here, but then not far from here, Gulfport, on the research cruise to the Gulf of Mexico. So at that time, Eric was a chief scientist on board, and I was just a simple postdoc. And I didn't expect, a couple years later, we have this fateful reunion, like what I said yesterday. So anyway, so today I'm going to give you a little bit of information from northwestern of Mexico, from where I work, and just basically 2 case studies on different responses of acidification of water bodies to the respiration. Okay. And before I start, I want to acknowledge my students. All these are students, technicians, and colleagues at UCC. And part of the work from the Frog Island Banks National Marine Sanctuary, all these colleagues from there, they have helped quite a bit over the years. And a few colleagues over NOAA, Atlantic Ocean Meteorological Lab, and Steve DeMarco from Texas University College Station. And also, as the part of the study, I involved data from different sources. For example, the Gulf of Mexico ecosystem and carbon research cruises, the number 1 and number 3 from 10 years apart, and then there's another cruise from 2016. There's a rapid response cruise in response to the localized coral mortality event in the Frog Island Banks area. And the funding to these 2 studies actually was provided by NOAA, a little bit from the Ocean Acidification Program, and then the Frog Island Banks, they provided all of the logistical support to the study. Okay. So for those of you that, I don't know, for a student, probably all know this, CO2 can. CO2 is everywhere. And if you want to look for the CO2 record in the past some years, you can always Google, put the CO2 trend in the keyword and then search. Go to the first link, is actually a NOAA website. And there, I don't know how many have seen this video. None? Very okay. If you haven't, I encourage you to go there to take a look. This is actually, go to the webpage, go to the CO2 movie. You can see the CO2 level in the atmosphere over the past 800,000 years. Okay. So the latter part of the record was from direct observation, and earlier there were ice core data. You can see over the past just a few decades to a couple hundred years, it's been increasing at an unprecedented rate, very fast. So because of the CO2 increase in the atmosphere, there is an increasing concern with regard to ocean acidification, which I will talk to you briefly later. But then, it's not a habit, but then I did have this kind of a creative look for the number of ocean acidification related things on the internet. So that was before a talk in 2014. Before I prepared the talk, I just had this curiosity to look for the ocean acidification online. So I tracked ocean acidification. You can see the number of links were about 400,000 links. That was 4 years ago. And this was before another talk, 2016. So I searched again, it went to 1.4 million. 1.6 million, so that's 4 times, okay? And then just a few days before I came here, so I searched again. 2018, you can see that's almost another 4 times, a little shy. And I'm sure sitting in the audience, there is one computer geek that I know. More law, which is just to describe how fast the computer power increase over the years. So basically, it is it doubles. The power of computer doubles every year and a half. Now what you have in hand as a smartphone, probably back in the 70s, is a full house of computers, right? And then if I plot the number of ocean acidification rate link against time, so that's what I got. Okay? And if you're a statistician, you may want to do this log transformation. That's a pretty good linear, although only 3 points. So who knows whether in the future it's going to go to this exponential increase or not, and we'll check back 2 years later. Okay? So this is outline my talk. The first is I will give you a very brief overview on this CO2 chemistry. And the CO2 comes from both the atmosphere because of the fossil fuel combustion and deforestation and the cement production. The second then comes from the respiration from water column. And then first case study is hypoxia in estuary in Texas, where I'm from. And then the second is acidification of subsurface water in the northern Gulf of Mexico, close to Frog Island Banks National Marine Sanctuary. And then I'll just summarize this with a couple open questions. Okay, so, and if you haven't learned marine chemistry, this is a very brief overview on the CO2 and ocean acidification. So if you have the increase in the CO2 level in the atmosphere, so CO2, because the seawater is a static basic, so it dissolves CO2 and forms carbonic acid. So this carbonic acid can react with carbonate ion produced by carbonate. So this reaction decreases level of carbonate ion. And in terms of CO2, no matter whether it's from the air or from the water respiration, it all cause acidification to the water body. So because of this acidification going on, so this process will reduce the concentration of carbonate ion, okay? Because in seawater, calcium doesn't change a lot. So in the end, based on the thermodynamics, the product of calcium and carbonate ion divided by the solubility constant of the carbonate give us the saturation state, omega. Okay, so the omega, based on the thermodynamics, if it's greater than 1, that means supersaturation, or if it's less than 1, that means water becomes porous or carbonate dissolved. There are 2 common types of carbonate in the marine environment. One is raconite, the other is calcite, and the raconite is being slightly more soluble. Okay, so that's a very basic thing about the CO2 chemistry. That's what I would talk about from my chemical technology class. And that just to show you what has happened over the past some years since I got to Texas. Okay, so this is a speciation, the so-called germ plot of the carbonate system. And there are a few curves, basically 3 different carbonate species. So the blue curve is carbonic acid, the red curve is bicarbonate, and the green curve is carbonate ion concentration. So you can see if you increase the CO2 level in the water, it's going to drive down the pH value. So pH is a negative log of the proton concentration. So the higher the CO2, the higher the proton concentration, and the lower the pH. And in 2012, before I went to the Corpus Christi, my former postdoc advisor sent a student on my behalf because I had to help him with another project in Ohio. So they went out there to the Texas shelf and collected a bunch of seawater. So that was what we observed back in 2012 in the Texas shelf with a pH of 8.08. And based on the trajectory of the CO2 increase in the atmosphere, by the end of the century, you can see that if the CO2 level goes to 800 parts per million in the atmosphere, and then based on this chemical equilibrium, assuming no temperature change, keep the same salinity, and the pH would drop from 8.08 to 7.80. Okay. So I'm sure probably all of you have heard of the word ocean acidification. And sometimes when you see the headline in the news report that saying ocean is turning acidic, don't believe them because it's not going to be acidic in any foreseeable future. Okay, so it's still basic, but it's being acidified, that's the truth. Okay, so then the chemical equilibrium changes because of the CO2 increase. What you get is a rebalance of these different species in the seawater. And then causes a whole host of consequences for different organisms. So, in addition to CO2 increase or ocean acidification, there's another concern in the oceanic community. Basically, that is the concern over the so-called deoxygenation problem. Okay? So if you see all these blue areas, these are the ocean operating zones. The water comes from the depth that has lower oxygen level. And all these red dots that goes along all these edge of the continents, these are the areas that have the low oxygen, shallow water areas. They have the hypoxic conditions, from time to time. So it has been a pretty serious topic. I think in the 2016 Ocean Science meeting in New Orleans, there was a special session focusing on this ocean deoxygenation. So for the open ocean, I don't want to talk about, I don't have any data myself. So, but for coastal deoxygenation, there is indeed a major mechanism that can explain this. And what you're looking at here, this is a drainage basin of the Mississippi River. Okay, so this is actually not my idea. It's 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, at the surf meeting, Nasarella actually presented this, basically what you got over here, that drainage basin, because of the, application of fertilizers, it's not intentional, I'm sure, but then these fertilizers get washed off into these different tributaries and all converge into the Mississippi River. And then in the end, all these excess nutrients got washed down into the coastal Louisiana. Okay. So what happens is that, following the nutrient export, this nutrient stimulates the production of the phytoplankton, quite a bit. And this phytoplankton, there's cells of the phytoplankton have limited lifetime, and then they can be consumed by the zooplankton of various kinds and form this particulate organic matter. And then these particles can sink into the bottom, which then is used by the microbes. So based on respiration, they consume organic carbon and then produce CO2 and then make water hypoxic. And this is actually the most recent example from the past July's cruise from Memphis Group. You can see, our area actually isn't as big as the year before, which I'm going to touch on later on. So for deoxygenation, so earlier the slide basically shows the respiration, so draw down oxygen level. And then for, more of the global events, if we have a warmer ocean, and this plot basically shows the density. I like to use the color plot to show, what I'm going to talk about. So the x-axis is the temperature, and then this is salinity. You can see for lower temperature and higher salinity, you have higher density. Okay, so this is actually, the physical force. If you have, for example, at the mouth of the Mississippi River in the northern Gulf of Mexico, and you have the river water come out from the river mouth, and then it has low salinity, and then it's warm, it's going to form this type of a lid on top of the denser water and saltier water underneath. So create the physical condition for the hypoxic carbon because it just basically stops the oxygen exchange. And then if you have higher temperature and then higher salinity, you can also have the lower starting oxygen condition. So basically, the temperature has two types of control on the future, the deoxygenation problem. Okay, so if you look at this is a respiration reaction. Basically here, this is a organic matter in this classic red-field composition, and under the influence of oxygen, if it goes through the aerobic respiration, it's going to produce CO2 and acid, okay, nitric acid, phosphoric acid. So on this plot, this basically is total alkalinity versus total dissolved inorganic carbon or total dissolved CO2. And these contour lines represent the pH levels. Okay, so it's hard to see, but then this is increase in the pH level. If you follow the reaction stoichiometry from here, and respiration produce proton. So alkalinity is, in seawater, that's vast majority is composed of carbonate and bicarbonate. If you produce acid, it's going to titrate down the alkalinity. But then at the same time, if you have respiration, it's going to produce CO2. So alkalinity will draw down and the CO2 will increase. So respiration will cause a decrease in the pH. So that's the acidification process. And on the other hand, if you have photosynthesis, basically that's a reverse reaction of the respiration. You will have an increase in the pH. And then, that's a study we had back in Georgia in 2011. So you can see when nutrients come out from the river, and it stimulates production in the surface, so the pH goes this way. So you have an increase in the pH in the surface due to the production. But then when this organic matter sinks to the bottom, okay, so that drives aerobic respiration, and then the pH goes this way. So that's so-called metabolically driven acidification on top of the ocean acidification because of the atmospheric CO2 increase. And you can see that based on multi-year data that was actually from 2006 to 2009, quite a few seasons, there was a pretty good positive correlation between the pH and dissolved oxygen level. I'm going to show you, this does vary, from place to place. Okay, so let me take you to Texas and look at the hypoxia in the Texas estuary. Before I go in there, just give you a very brief overview of the Texas estuaries. The map is kind of grainy, but then we're roughly here, I believe. So you can see from northern Texas coastline all the way to close this Baton Bay. And there are a lot of lagoonal systems along the Texas coast. And a lot of these lagoons, they do have the different type of river input, but these rivers are very different. And they based on the data from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality ever since 1969. And I did a compilation of all these river alkalinity levels, from the north, the higher latitude, to the south. You can see it has a lot of variability, up to 4 or 5 times. And the blue dashed line represents what's in the seawater. So you can see in some of the rivers, or seasonally, it can be much higher in alkalinity than the seawater. So, and if you look at the total dissolved CO2 and alkalinity, and I want you to focus on this is the Corpus Christi Bay, that's where I am from, I work over here. And so Corpus Christi Bay and Baton Bay down to the south, and this star represents the seawater level. So you can see, how high they are, it can be compared to the seawater. So a lot of bicarbonate and carbonate dissolving the water. Okay, so that's these two systems, Corpus Christi Bay and Baton Bay. So in some of the Texas estuaries, a lot of these estuaries are pretty shallow, but then they do have this problem of running into hypoxic. So hypoxia, by definition, is empirical. Okay, so it's defined as oxygen concentration less than 2 milligrams per liter. And this is a Corpus Christi Bay, and our campus is right there. It's a little bit kind of we call it island. And then you can see this oxygen level can be quite low. So actually hypoxia it was first observed in the late 1980s. So not really, there's not a lot of oceanographic study in this area. There was actually, I think this study was from an environmental engineer some years ago. They proposed that high perceiling water coming off from either also Bay or Laguna Madre may have driven the formation of hypoxia. So it's not exactly the same as what we saw in the Louisiana shelf. Okay, so the high perceiling water, especially from also Bay, it was because there is a pretty large power plant. They draw water from the Laguna Madre as a cooling water, and then they would expel the waste, higher levels of salt, water with higher levels of salt into also Bay, so it can flow out. But that was back then. So I intend, since I learned this, I intend to find out what's going on in this hypoxic system, especially how the carbonate system respond into this type of a hypoxic event. Okay, so we went out 2 years. So we kind of identified 28 stations in the southeast corner of the Corpus Christi Bay, and then we collected surface water and bottom water over multiple trips in 2 years, 2015 and 2016. So we collected field data, salinity, temperature, dissolved oxygen, and we also collected a bunch of water samples, analyzed total alkalinity, total dissolved CO2, and pH, as well as the carbonate calcium ions, and then also the major nutrients. And then we calculated the carbonate saturation state, and we also calculated pH, TCO2, and omega, so which is the carbonate saturation state, all it is. Okay. So let me just show you the surface water back in 2015. Okay. So you're looking at salinity from June and August. Okay, so you can see salinity back in June. That's 15. We had quite a few big storms, and then August. This 2-year transition period, there has been a lot of precipitation in the beginning, in the flood, and then evaporation. Okay, so actually I'm going to show you this picture. It's in my front yard. That's after the few pretty big rain events. I don't know what's going to happen next 2 days there. But, so then, first the flood, precipitation, and then evaporation, you can see it changed pretty quickly. In South Texas, the evaporation rate can be pretty high. And in terms of pH and omega, you can see pH didn't change a whole lot from June to August. And the increase, a little bit increase from omega with respect to arachidonite, from the June, I cannot read the number, but then it does increase because the color becomes warmer. All right, and then look at the bottom water. First of all, you can see that the bottom water salinity, it was already high back in June compared to the surface, and then August is even higher. Also, there was a little bit of hypoxia in June, but then not anymore in August. And then if you look at the pH and omega, both in June and August, they were pretty high. And then also with, it's accompanied by the relatively high salinity that's there. And then the PCO2, which is also calculated, is very low. So the water appears to be highly evaporated. So then we went there again in 2016. And I think it was a total of 9 trips, and basically plotted them together and made a small movie. And before I start the movie, you can see here, that's the surface. That's bottom. So we're looking at the top panels are the dissolved oxygen. The lower panels are the pH. So we start from June the 1st. And then to the middle of the June, you can see very high pH. That's bottom water. High pH water again. And come below. I went all the way to the end of the September. So just to you another chance to look at it. So you can see from the southeast corner of the cross-crystal bay, the pH can be very, very high. Okay, it actually goes up to 8.3, and much higher than what you see in the open ocean. Just go forward. You know, since you saw earlier, there was a very good positive correlation between the dissolved oxygen and the pH. And then I just plot the pH and the oxygen concentration together. And you can see here, that's pH, that dissolved oxygen. And that's all we observed in the Corpus Christi Bay. So this blue dotted line actually represents the evolution of the Texas shelf water. If we allow the water to have saturated oxygen to begin with, and that oxygen to get slowly consumed, and then the pH would follow this curve. So obviously you can see, even though in the Corpus Christi Bay, the water can be very low in oxygen, but pH isn't as low as what you would expect out of the Texas shelf water. And the same applies to the omega, the carbonate saturation state. So even though oxygen can be very low, but omega is still very high. So this water appears to have pretty high barrier buffer against acidification. And then, the thing I didn't plot was the salinity has positive correlation with omega and pH as well. So salinity is a key factor here. Yeah, so that's actually what I said about it. So we have a very tiny, small system, and I wanted to compare, what's going on, to other systems. What are the differences or similarities? So this is what we have for the Corpus Christi Bay, pH versus dissolved oxygen. And these few green data points were from a study that we had back in last year. That's in northern Gulf of Mexico. And this is from Long Island Sound. And this is from Rhode Island, Narragansett Bay. And this is where Pablo is from, Jamaica Bay, next to the Kennedy Airport. So you can see these correlations between pH and DOs are very different, even though they all have a similar type of trend, but they have different intercepts. So that's actually from a paper published by the Chris Calvert's group in the Stone group. So what are the differences? Subtropics, Louisiana Shelf, then the northeastern estuaries. And it's very simple. In the south, we have warmer climate. We have saltier water, especially if you saw, I just got to emphasize, there's a pretty high salinity water coming off from the Madre into the Corpus Christi Bay. But then if you go to the northeast, it's much cooler, the water can be fresher with less salt. So based on the thermodynamics, solubility of oxygen, if you have cooler water, fresher water, you will have higher levels of oxygen to begin with. So that's what happens over here compared to what we have, even though this is also saturated. So this water chemistry determines their response to the CO2 addition, the difference in the response. So what about the carbonate buffer? So there's another parallel movie just to show you. Again, here that's the surface, you can see, and then bottom. But here, the top panel is the salinity. The bottom panels represent the CO2 partial pressure. And that's the beginning of June. You can see this very highly saline water in this area, and the PCO2 is extremely low. So this is actually, the blue is 300. So remember, air CO2 level is roughly 400. So this is much lower than the air. Okay. So let's see. still very low, very high. So that's to the end of the September. So you can see that water, that's bottom water to the southeast corner of the Corpus Christi Bay, PaCO2 can be pretty low with very high salinity. Okay. And oops, I don't know if well, this is the replay of the video. All right, finish. Okay. And this is the correlation between the carbonate saturation state and PaCO2. So you can see as PaCO2 is getting lower, so which is, when the water is very salty, PaCO2 is very low. And the calculated omega, which is the carbonate saturation state, is very high. What happened? Does the Mississippi have sea rises? This is the reference question. It does, okay. Texas has a lot of sea rises, especially towards the south, where the water getting, clearer. This is actually not from Texas. This is a picture I stole from one of the Bahamas trips that I had more than a decade ago. A lot of sea rises. If you look at the distribution of the sea rises along the Texas coast, here that's the Corpus Christi Bay, and the hypoxic water we were looking at was here in this area, and to the south of it, Laguna Madre, there's a very dense meadows of sea rises. Right? Okay, backward. So, and this is what I would explain why we're seeing this very highly saline water coming down to the Corpus Christi Bay, and then we saw the hypoxia, and then still the water was so well buffered. First, we have the sun. If you've been to Texas, not so much tree, and then a lot of sun. And not so much cloud either, and after the storm. So a lot of evaporation. Because of the evaporation of the water, Laguna Madre is pretty shallow, average depth roughly 1 meter. And then go to the Corpus Christi Bay, can be, to the southwest east corner, it can be a few meters. So this creates this density flow because of the evaporation. You remove water, water becomes denser. And this density flow actually creates a little bit of a stratification, so that this bottom water is kind of isolated from the surface and stops the oxygen exchange between the top and the bottom. So maybe something is dying there when the oxygen level is low. But in terms of chemistry, you have the evaporation. This is a major ion, so concentration mostly follows the salinity. So because of evaporation, you have the increase in the calcium concentration. And remember, there's the seagrasses with the sun. They can carry out very intensive photosynthesis, so that CO2 is being taken down by the seagrasses and synthesize the carbohydrate or organic matter. So that this CO2 is being removed into the organic matter. So you're looking at a shift of the equilibrium, so that you're going to have increased level of carbonate ion. And if you look at this definition of the carbonate saturation state, calcium concentration increases because of evaporation. And then carbonate ion concentration also increases because of photosynthesis. So that because of the combination of the processes, you actually have the increase in the omega value in this density flow water. So in the end, you have the higher omega and the higher pH. So that is why we think this water, even though it can go hypoxic, but then because of all these processes going on, they form this nice system. Even though oxygen goes down, the pH doesn't go down as much as what you would expect out of the regular seawater. Right? So This is the comparison again between these 5 different systems. And well, actually, this was something we presented 2 years ago at the SURF meeting. And at the same meeting, in the same session, Dick Philly, the most famous ocean acidification scientist in NOAA, PMEL, he presented a similar thing in comparing the Gulf of Mexico, which is where we see it here. And then this is from the West Coast. And then they published the paper this year. We still, my student trying to submit it. So, anyway, for just a little summary for the toxicity debate, the hypoxia formation is caused by density flow. That's based on salinity, we can see. And this density flow has high pH, low PCO2 because of the seagrass activity. And this hypoxia acidification correlation was significant, although the pH and omega decrease weren't as much as in other coastal systems. So this system obviously is bad buffered. Okay, that's that's one reason preserved seagrasses for a lot of useful things. That's one of them. So now let's go to the Gulf of Mexico. So this is the Frog Island Bank. It's the eastern Frog Island Bank. I stole from the Frog Island Bank National Marine Sanctuary. Just a little bit of history or fact about the Frog Island Banks. It was discovered in the early 1900s. And then the east and west Frog Island Bank was designated as the sanctuary in 1992. So that's the east, that's the west. And Stanton Bank is to the north. And this is actually because of the formation is quite interesting. It's because of the salt dome. If you're not familiar with the geology in the Gulf, I encourage you to go look. That's because of the ancient Jurassic age salt deposit in the beginning, and then there's a river sediment coming out from the Mississippi, and then compaction, and then a lot of physical activities going on just pushed up a lot of seamounts underneath the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, and in these Frog Island Bank areas, actually, even though the seabed can be close to 100 meters deep, the dome can reach as shallow as 20 meters from the sea surface. So it's a very unique system. So I started working with the Frog Island Bank colleagues back in the end of 2013. I used to work in Georgia with the Grace Rig National Marine Sanctuary, so I liked working with them. So after I got to Texas, I started contacting, search around. I saw this another marine sanctuary, so I just asked them, do you want to look at the company system? And they said, well, sure, we don't have this measurement. So I just started tagging along with their trips. So you can see this salinity from end of 2013 all the way to the end of last year. We have the new data, so haven't put in yet. So you can see there's a cyclic change of the salinity. There's a 2016 flood. Very obvious decrease in salinity. And this is Hurricane Harvey. So even though some area in Houston had 50 inches of rain, but this fresh water apparently didn't go to the Frog Island Bank, actually turned this out. So the influence wasn't as much as in 2016. But salinity, temperature-wise, there's a pretty nice seasonal variation. So just briefly on the surface water that we collected, you can see this is the pH, that's the carbonated saturated state, and the PCO2. They have pretty good correlation with the temperature. So the temperature basically was the controlling factor, the major controlling factor for their variation. And for pH, for PCO2, so this is air PCO2. You can see when the PCO2 of the water is above the air level, so that's degas. So this mostly happening in the summer. And then that's in the winter. If you have a lower temperature, you can have lower PCO2. So just this is the pH and omega. So basically, you can see that in 2016, there's a fairly large influence to pH, although it's not out of the norm. But based on the 3-year, 4-year data set, we cannot say, well, there's a trend yet. So the thing actually involved in, the thing we published recently was because of something different. In 2016, remember this drop in salinity? In that period, I think it's the middle of July of 2016, a bunch of fishermen or some divers went there and discovered there's a pretty bad mortality event in the eastern Falkland Bank. So there's a big series. So they reported to the Marine Sanctuary. So they sent out a cruise to this area and just to study what's going on. So, whether it's chemistry or biology or waste or whatever. Okay? So that's actually, earlier this year in February, we had a gathering in Galveston just to try to figure out what's going on. So there are biologists, modeler, physical oceanographers, and microbiologists, a lot of people out there. But, we discussed for a day and a half. This is the conclusion. Because we didn't identify, what's going on, what caused this mortality in this eastern Falkland Bank. So, however, I got sidetracked because, here, these are the stations that we had the water collection all the way down to 250 meters. So earlier, the few graphs I showed you was mostly from the surface. So I always go down to the depth. I didn't have a chance until 2016. And then I memorized, well, I do have the data from roughly 10 years ago, from 2007, but roughly 100 kilometers away. So I thought, well, can I make a comparison between the 2016 and 2007 and see whether there's any change? This is a slightly longer term compared to what we had for 3 years of data. Okay? So just to show you that I was in the 2007 cruise. And I didn't notice my belly was so big already. That's 2007, 11 years ago. So you can see we had this first GLOMAC cruise. So this is Galveston Transact, actually went all the way up to the Gulf of Maine. And in 2017, there's another cruise focusing on Gulf of Mexico only. So there's exactly the same Transact, except a few stations out to the outer shelf and the upper slope. And I want to compare this Transact, so it's the same Transact, same stations, with what we had over here. So even though from this map you can see a little distance, but then here it's actually within the circle. And just to show you the water chemistry, the first panel shows normalized total alkalinity, normalized against the same salinity 35. So over the 3-year period, 2007, 16, 17, alkalinity barely changed. But there is definitely some change in the total dissolved CO2. So then I set out to find out, what is responsible for this increase. So pH, by calculation, you can see that's 07, and then 16 and 17, all lower than 07 overall. Omega lower, but not as much, visually. So because surface water, there's a lot of variability. Okay, so I won't show you the surface yet. I will show you later. I was mainly interested in things, for stable water masses, just to see what has changed over the period of 10 years. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the physical oceanography plot. So this is basically a potential temperature versus salinity plot. Each of these curves represent an equal density water mass. Okay, so if we're looking at this sigma theta of 26, this is a density surface at roughly 100 meters. And if I go to 27, that's about 300 meters. Because of so much variability at the top, so that's the shallow water, I didn't compare them in the beginning. So I was focusing on the bottom water, the subsurface water from 100 meters down. And compare this to 3 different periods. So now I'm asking you to tilt your head. This is from the 100 meter. This is from roughly 250 meter. And that's the pressure, for the shallow water, pressure is similar to the water depth. That's the 3 different trips to 2006, 2007, 16, and 17. So you can see there's a little variation at each actual surface. There's a little variation in the depth. But for salinity, it's pretty small variation across the 3 different sampling periods. Temperature is even less. And in terms of the total alkalinity, that's within the error uncertainty of the analysis. So below 100 meter to 200 meter depth, the change was pretty small in terms of physical parameters, and for this alkalinity as a chemical parameter. But if you look at the DIC, so that's from 2007. Again, from 100 meter to about 250 meter. That's 2016, and this is 2017. So very significant change over the period of 10 years, from 7 to 17, and including 16 in the middle. Okay? So then, if you look at the apparent oxygen utilization, basically that's the difference between oxygen saturation concentration and the observed oxygen. And it's the same thing. So the higher the AOU, apparent oxygen utilization, the higher the DIC, total dissolved organic, inorganic carbon. Oh, by the way, here the axis is actually micromole, so it's messed up between the MAC and the PC conversion. If you look at the nutrients, this is silicate and nitrate, so that's actually nitrate and nitrite together. So that's 07 versus 17. I didn't have the 16 data, but then based on the reaction stoichiometry, it should follow the same trend. And then the phosphate, so 7 and 17. So there's substantial change in nutrient, oxygen level, and carbon. So for chemical oceanographers, we want to find out just to distinguish different contributing factors. So the next thing I thought about was, if I had oxygen difference, nutrient difference, I can check out what's going on, based on stoichiometry, what happened to the carbon. So again, for this red field photosynthesis and respiration, you can see the CO2 production, for respiration, and nutrients and oxygen, they would follow the SAD ratios. Okay, so that's for the global classic red field stoichiometry. And then in northern Gulf of Mexico, just a few years ago, based on, also roughly 6 to 7 years of data, we derived this relationship. You can see from delta AOU versus DIC versus the nitrate nitrite together and phosphate. It's slightly different than the red field, but then it's pretty close. So based on this comparison, because I didn't have the nutrient for 2016, so I only compared the 2007 and 17. So this is the overall DIC difference. Okay, but then based on the reaction stoichiometry from delta AOU between the 2 years, delta nitrate and phosphate, I could calculate how much of the CO2 was added because of respiration, from these 3 different type of species. So then I averaged 3. So that'll give me the DIC or CO2 production because of respiration, and subtract that from this overall CO2 change between the 2 years. So basically the assumption is that delta DIC, the photo change is because of respiration, and the rest has to be because of the anthropogenic CO2 increase, so absolute solution. So this is what I got. And again, looking from the 100 meter to 250 meter, you can see that DIC, because of anthropogenic CO2 intrusion, that's outside of the reaction, based on the red field stoichiometry, and then based on our own stoichiometry. And percentage-wise, the total amount of the DIC increase, if we use the red field ratio, it will be roughly 30% is because of the anthropogenic CO2 intrusion. Then 40% is from the CO2 intrusion. So the rest of it is from the respiration. Okay. So basically, anthropogenic CO2 contribute 30 to 40% of total DIC increase in this water column. And rest is from the respiration because of the increase in nutrients and the decrease in oxygen. So similarly, you can correlate that to the deoxygenation, so lower oxygen overall between these 2 years. So increase in AOU, but then lower in oxygen level. So you can go back to this target analogy, whether, I don't know, if this is what has happened. And this is if you remember earlier, that zone, the hypoxic zone plot from the 2018, so this is substantially higher in 2017. That's when the GOMAC3 data in 2017 was collected, okay? And if you look at this time series from middle of 1980s, and that's before the 2007 the GOMAC1 cruise. This is from the GOMAC3 cruise. So this area is much larger. Even though there may be debate on how this hypoxic zone is being measured, different people have different opinions. But then apparently this looks like there's higher nutrient influence, okay? Because there is this positive correlation between the amount of nutrient loading from the Mississippi River system and the area of the hypoxia in the Louisiana shelf. And this nutrient loading actually is 2 months before the cruise, the surveys, right? So that's actually a lot of it is my speculation. Because 17 has so much higher hypoxic area, could have much higher nutrient export. So would that be the reason for a lot of nutrient coming down not only to the depth zone, but then it went down to the shelf slope ridge, then influence the subsurface water. And just to show you the difference, this is from Bob Hatland's group in the college station. They had, if you're interested, go check this website. It's very interesting. They have this annual simulation of the salinity. So the dark color, the blue color is represent the low salinity throughout the year. From I don't remember what year it began, but then it ended in 2016. I was trying to look for the 17, but I didn't find it. But then from 07, that's 2 months before the GOMAC1 cruise. And that's the 3 stations that are compared in the Gulf Stream transect. That's in 16. You can see there's substantial difference in the salinity, so or freshwater influence. So I'm waiting to see whether when they're going to upload the 2017 simulation. I would expect to see a lot of it, low salinity water to the shelf. So by and large, you can see that this area 16 versus 07, there's a much more prevalent presence of the water on the northern Gulf of Mexico. Okay, so still go back to look at the DIC 07, 16, 17. There's progressive increase of DIC level in this water depth range, and also an increase in AOU or decrease in oxygen level. So, once it's in the closed system underneath the water surface, go hand in hand, increase in CO2, increase in the AOU. But then compare with the, a wider area of the globe to subtract the pH in 17 by the pH in the, subtract 2007 from 17, you can see over the 10-year period, there is a total decrease of roughly 0.09 at the density surface 26.1, and then it goes to 0.04 in about 250 meters. Then compare with surface. So this is surface upper 30 meter decrease between 2 years, 07 and 17. So you can see the subsurface pH decrease is much higher than what you saw in the surface water. Then compare to the global area. In the North Pacific, it's over a 10-year period, it's actually less than 0.02. So this subsurface is being acidified much quicker than the open Pacific water. And then compare with the North Atlantic entirely, that's still similar level to the Pacific, even a little higher. You can see this patch water is being acidified really quick. Okay, and then compare with omega to arachnite. And that's upper 30 meter. So this increase in the acidification actually, it goes up to about 180 to 200 meters, or 200 to 250 meters, so close to the surface. And the rest of it is still acidified much quicker based on the omega. And then compare with the nearby Caribbean Sea. So that's what you would expect out of the acidification from the CO2 intrusion only. That's very simple. So a lot of difference is because of the respiration going on in this subsurface water. Okay, so sorry, it's taking really long. So just briefly the summary and the open questions. And you can see based on this plot of different areas, estuaries or coastal waters, really the response of the pH or proton concentration with the oxygen consumption, they do have different responses, okay? So that if you were to design some experiment to examine the species, biological species, animals or whatever, response to acidification, you're going to have to consider seriously what your water media start from, right? And the Corpus Christi Bay and Gulf of Mexico, regardless the fact that they do get acidified because of the oxygen consumption, but then they do have the better buffer against the northern estuaries and coastal waters. Right? But the open question indeed still, this is kind of there are two colleagues sitting in Spanish oceanographers. When there is faster increase in the proton level, is it because of the presence of nutrients coming off from Mississippi or probably Texas? And because we only had 3 snapshots of the thing, is this something that will still keep going, or this is episodic, seasonal? We don't know. That's something I think we can find out in the future. Probably have more ship time to go up there, and then at different seasons to see whether this is something that is persistent. So this pretty fast acidification in this water column. I think I'm down here.